wants are unlimited, but the resources to satisfy them are limited, has been challenged. I'll go reread my economics books again. There's no reason that we cannot satisfy every need of a Namibian. Thought-provoking, Prof, indeed. Okay, next up, we will allow, I know that everybody would want to ask the good professor a question, but because of time, can we agree on, it will be a challenge to say who will ask the question, but can we limit the questions to 5, if possible? Okay, the professor is coming. We have a mic here, so who shall go first?
Your address to us was very thought-provoking, informative. My problem that I have with Africa is that you find that aspiring to leadership is no more to serve the people that you want to lead. It's to self-enrichment. I've seen it happening in South Africa, I've seen it happening in our country. People fighting for positions to the point of trying to kill each other. Secondly, you find a skewed situation in Africa where you find business people, instead of focusing on growing the economy, also want to become politicians. And I don't understand why you want to be wearing two hats. If you choose business, go into business. If you choose politics, go into politics. But if you go into politics to serve the people, not for self-enrichment. And that is what is happening in Africa at the moment. And it's very sad. Unless we change our mindset on that, we will never progress as she said. Thank you.
The topic that you addressed, I think, was very good. We essentially talk about African development. What have we done since independence? Very good question. But I think everything needs to be taken into context. For example, you mentioned something that I agree with. You said land is the last solution for colonialism. Then you also highlighted that if you don't do it correctly, we shall be punished. But then what are we saying? We can't take back what is ours. If we try to take it back in a certain way, we should be fair punished. There's a challenge somewhere. Development happens in a cooperative manner. I can't take his belongings and tomorrow when he wants them back, and I don't agree with the way he wants to take it back, then I must punish him. There's something not right. Another big challenge that I think we have in terms of development is, like you mentioned, everything begins and falls with leadership. Now, our greatest challenge, in my view, is us Africans to don't have faith in ourselves. Now, if you don't have faith in yourself, who must have faith in you? You need to give examples of education, medicine, where our leaders, for examples, when they are sick, or let's say they need to educate their kids, they send them somewhere else. Is it then any wonder that those institutions of yours don't develop? The same with the confidence comes through. If I tell my boss, Simon, let us do things in this and that manner, and somebody from Europe comes and it tells me the exact same thing, and this person will call him an expert or whatever, my boss will actually believe that person. If you don't believe that, he knows that I told him the very same thing. So for us, we need to develop as Africans, we need to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. We see ourselves as less than other people. We see Europeans or Caucasians as better people than ourselves, and by default, we put ourselves lower than them. Look at the Chinese. Why are the Chinese where they are today, the Chinese have faith in themselves. They started the revolution, they decided this is how we're going to do it, whether A, B, C, and D likes it or doesn't like it, and then they add what is the worship of the world. So really, it starts with having confidence in yourself and believing that you can do something. The last thing on what have we done with independence, I agree that many countries have been independent for the past 50 years and so on. And we must also understand how they got independence. So we start reading a lot of literature. You will notice that the way independence was acquired, I want to use an example of our current president. He has a thesis that was published in 2004. His doctorate. And in that thesis, I think on page 13 until page 19, he indicates and he tells you that, and I just want to highlight a sentence, the compromises that we had to make to gain independence, we have not recovered from them even 27 years after independence. Also, when you have been under a foreign rule for 75 years, and people expect you within the next 10 years to change or undo what was done within 75 years, it is not practical. I'm not saying we must not try to change things. Yes, we must do it, but we must also understand the reality of our situations and then assist ourselves to gain confidence to do it. Thank you.
Not having faith in our own institutions in our own people. And then, when we gained independence, yes, there were certain compromises. And how do we navigate around that?
These are my thoughts. These are not answers to your question. One of the very first difficult problems to be dealt with at independence, if you remember the 1963 Addis Ababa conference and the Cairo conference on the colonial boundaries. There were those who argued that we must redraw the colonial boundaries. And Nkrumah and Nyerere said, if we begin the process of redrawing the colonial boundaries, tell me which country will not be at conflict with the other. And that is how they came up with the doctrine of the inviolability of the colonial boundaries. They said these boundaries are bad. They divided our people. I'm sure here in Namibia, up in the north, you have the same people in Angola as they are in Namibia. You have that in every other country. But the leaders said, let us make the best of what we have. Let us remain with all these countries. And since then, we have had conflict. The Southwest African cases are known. We have had the conflict between Nigeria and the Cameroons. We have had the conflict between Tunisia and Libya. We have had the conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. All these conflicts have been there, but luckily they have been resolved. We have the conflict between Senegal and the Gambia. And the beauty of it is that to a certain extent we have done reasonably well with these boundaries. Which brings me to the nagging question of land, which is very emotive. In fact, it is one of the questions which, when confronted to try to be reasonable and logical, only invites anger. But yet, there is another reality. And we must ask ourselves how the land question has been dealt with in other countries. Kenya had a very large settler population. And on the eve of independence, there was an understanding that these settlers had developed the land. There was the option to send them away, to drive them away to some other place. But the decision was then made by the departing colonial government that we must have a scheme where this land is bought from the white settlers. And we formed the Agricultural Finance Corporation and the Agricultural Development Corporation, and there was a process of buying this land from those who are willing. The same was to happen in Zimbabwe, but it did not happen. And that, I think, is what annoyed President Mugabe. Here in Namibia, I'm aware of the situation. How do you deal with it? This is your own problem, how you deal with it. But what is my suggestion? That all the concerned party must be involved. And those who are landowners must be persuaded and made to understand that if the land problem is not resolved now, it will remain a problem. So how do you deal with it? I do not have the detailed mode of dealing with it, but they must begin to seed some of the land in a creative manner by involving the locals so that they are part of the problem. The details of it, can an outsider prescribe for you? No. The details for it must be worked by the Namibians themselves. But it's a problem that must be resolved. Because if it is not resolved, it will become cancerous and it will eat everybody. And I have no doubt in my mind that the Namibians, in their collective wisdom, will find a solution. That is my faith. That is my wish. That is my desire. That is all I can say. Should business persons be involved in politics? If I'm a businessman and I hold the view that I've done well in business and I've made a decision to join politics, why not? Why not? I should. But there should be a leadership code that defines how I conduct myself when I join politics. In 1967 in Arusha in Tanzania, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere and his stalwarts came with the Arusha Declaration and what they described as the leadership code. And they said that in leadership there must be certain ideals and certain taboos. Things that you must not engage in and things that you can legitimately engage in. The reason and the problem in many countries is that there is no code and therefore there are no taboos. Your typical African so-called leader who are essentially misleaders join politics essentially because the shortest cut to undeserved wealth is politics. If you want to acquire wealth that you have not worked for at all, become a politician in Africa is like winning a lottery. And they know it, and the people know it, and that is the tragedy of Africa. How can we deal with it? The quality of leadership also depends on the quality of followership. Part of the African problem is what a friend of mine has written a book about called negative ethnicity. The belief by backward people, it is always backward people, that their safety only lies in one from their tribe being in leadership. And I've always wondered, when you have a small child, ethnic group, and you are in the middle class and you are looking for a nanny, you are just looking for a good nanny. It must not be a Herero, it could be a Shiwambo or anybody else. When you are looking for a driver or a lecturer, it doesn't matter. But when you want a president, you now think that they must come from your ethnic group. I've never understood that logic. Your child who is with your child on a daily basis, you trust somebody from your ethnic, non-ethnic tribe, but the president who is going to affect your life, now you think, and permit me to use this word, some nincompoop from your tribe must be elected regardless of their ability to govern? I can never understand that logic across Africa. Across Africa. That if I'm a Zulu, the president must be a Zulu. That if I'm a Xhosa, the president must be a Xhosa. That if I'm a Shona, the president must be a Shona. What kind of logic is that? I'm submitting to us, and I can't agree with my friend who said about our mind. You know, we may not agree with it, but I'm going to say it. We of the Negroid blood, we of the Negroid blood, I'm saying this knowing that there are Caucasians here. There's something wrong with us. Until the day we admit it, we are going nowhere. Admission is the first step towards cure. In his book, Miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Woodson says it. He says and gives an example where one 10-year-old Caucasian boy could control 50 Negroids, but an adult Negro could not control them. Right now, in my own country, we couldn't run the airline. We have brought a white man to run it. We couldn't run our civil aviation, our Kenya Airports Authority. We have brought a white man to do it. If you go to many hotels here in Windhoek, the chefs are Caucasians. And when you, my Negroid brothers and sisters, see that there is a Caucasian, you think it is being done well. When you have a Caucasian pilot, you are happy. I'm submitting to us, and Ngugi wa Thiong'o is right. The African must decolonize his undermined. That is why you are running to the United States of America. That is why when you are sick, you go to the Morningside Hospital in South Africa, and when you see a white doctor coming, you are up because you know you now be cured. These are painful things to say, but we must say them. It is only then that the reason why the Asians and the Arabs are beginning to rise is because they have reacquired their self-esteem. Self-esteem is the beginning of the realization of oneself. You know, I know some of you may not be very religious, but permit me to give these religious analogies to be found in the book of Matthew in the Bible. Of this great rich white man who wanted to go away and called 3 of his workers, and he gave one 5 talents, and another one 2 talents, and another one 1 talent. And the Bible says he went away for a long time, and he came, and the one with 5 said, Master, I've worked the 5, they are now 10. And the one who was given 2 said, Master, I've worked the 2, and I now have 4. And to the one he gave 1, he said, I knew you. You are a man who is hard-hearted, who reaps where he has not sown and gathers where he has not scattered. I kept it in the belly of the earth, and here it is. And he told him, if you knew I was such a man, why did you not give it to the bankers that I may earn interest? And he called the one with the 10, let you be given in this one. And he said, and to those who do not have, even the little that they have shall be taken away, and it shall be given to those who have. And to we who have, even the little that we have shall be given to the Chinese. I'm submitting to us that the world is still about those who have will be given more. If you want that which is under the bed, you must bend. My submission to us, self-esteem. I would love to see people from Namibia scrambling to go to the business school in Lagos today. And there's business schools here in South Africa. I'm here in Namibia. I'm sure in the Namibia Business School at the University of Namibia, when they are teaching the case studies, is Enron. Oh, Enron. They are not studying about Nakumatt in Nairobi or Uchumi in Nairobi. We are drunk. And to continue and to conclude on that biblical basis, those of you who read the Bible, go to Paul's Paul's letter to the Galatians, he said, you Galatians, who has bewitched you? Who has bewitched you? Who has bewitched you? Who has bewitched you? Who has bewitched you that you believe that you are children of a lesser God? Who has bewitched you? Who has bewitched us? That is how serious it is. So I'm telling us that this continent will only be great, and you are young. I do not know whether you want to go to the United States of America. I do not know. Our young men and women must be here. The young Chinese are coming here. We must remain here. If we go to China, it must only be to school. So I'm submitting to us, and I'm now not speaking to the Caucasians origin, because the question as to whether being African or is the color of the skin that determines who an African is. It is the decision that determines. So you are African, but I'm now talking to your cousins, the Negroids. You Negroids, to which I belong, we must liberate our minds. We must regain our self-esteem. No, Japan assembles us. Prime Minister Abe assembles 54 African leaders, and they go there. 54 of them, they go to Japan. It would be easier if he came here. But 54 of them go there. You must wonder, what is wrong with this 54? Is it not easier for one to come so that he meets them in their environment that he wants to develop? European leaders call us our leaders, and they go there briefly, and as they are going, they inspect guards of honor in armies that cannot fight a war beyond 2 days if they are faced with an American weapon. Ceremonial armies. China assembles us in Beijing, 54 leaders going to China, complete in private jets. And when they come, they say the Chinese have now signed with us, all of Africa, $60 billion, which is half the size of the economy of Washington, D.C. $60 billion. And then we are beholden to them. And then we call those leaders unto death. They are. Which was the other question?
Very successful organizations are not supporting us. This brings me back to the points that you've raised earlier on, where we are saying, if we take the Chinese, and we take the Indians, and we take the Caucasians, when there's business interest, they will support it. And part of out of your teaching, what I would want to see is that everybody that is here will at least share a little bit of what they have and start supporting, so that we can also have that independence, so that we can run these businesses successfully. And linked to that as well, today we have a lot of black successful executives that are running their own businesses. Never will you see them ever saying that, let me advertise my business. Part of our survival is vested in that thing that says we are African and we will support those that want to support us. Instead, what we find would be the SME guy who's very small will come and say, look, please help me. And those we help. So the challenge and the jury is out for what I've just said now. Thank you very much for a very insightful
one-on-one on you, and thanks for my brother from New Year for making sure that you came here as an African home. Professor, with all humility, if I'm not breaking the protocol, I really wanted you to respond on the current nullification of election in our beautiful Kenya and Nairobi.
How should the corporate leadership distinguish itself in a troubled political leadership. Then very finally, I would want you to share with us your view as to what is your analysis on Namibian institutional formation for the purpose of guaranteeing accountability. And are they living up to their task? The institution that you have spoken about, are they living up to their task in your view? And are they sufficient?
Thank you. Thank you. Let me perhaps once again, these are my thoughts, because when you prescribe solutions, it's assumed that you know all the facts. I don't. But from what I know and what I've gathered over the years, this is a very young nation. This is a very young nation that is in the process of institution building. And I think you got it very right that you are coming from our history, whose institutions are still alive, whose habits are still alive. So it is a process. And my own view is that we must learn from what other countries have done. Because many countries in the world have gone through these experiences. And I like giving the example, say, of North Korea and South Korea. These are people of the same stock. One made a decision that will use our intelligence, our human and other resources for purposes of generating things that will add value to our lives and also trade with the world. The net effect is that South Korea is the home of Hyundai, it is the home of LG, it is the home of Samsung, it is the home of many things that we consume in our countries and in our houses on a daily basis, with a GDP which is anything between 20 and 25 United States dollars, properly distributed essentially with a good Gini index. Up in the north, their cousins who are the North Koreans chose another path. The path of deification of their leaders and the path of making missiles and conducting nuclear tests every other day. And we see in the same region they can't feed themselves. They use their intelligence in another negative direction out of fear and paranoia, and the others are moving in a totally different direction. And those of you who are older will remember that both these countries were decimated to the ground during the Korean War of 1953. In other words, countries must make a decision. There is another place that most of us who are in the middle class have converted into our shopping mecca called Dubai. This was a backwater desert a few years ago. The leaders simply decided when they had the oil wealth in Abu Dhabi and in that general area, and we have 3 countries or 3 emirates in that country, or 4 countries, Oman, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. And those countries today, if you look at a number of industries, look at their airlines, the Emirates, look at Etihad, look at Qatar Airline, they are some of the biggest in the world. What have they done? Have they complained about the fact that they were colonized? No, they have not. They have been aware of it. They have tried to deal with it, but they have not made it an obsession. What I'm submitting to us is that we must be aware that we have this very negative past, but that should not hold us. Yeah. And I'm saying that what we should do is creatively, therefore, to ask ourselves, what can we do? What can Namibia do? And Namibia has done a number of good things. You know, if he wanted, because of historical claim to power, Sam Nujoma would still be the president of this country. He would be. And of course, there would be agitation here and there, but what would you do about it? Very little. But he made a conscious decision, which is a decision that helps institutional building. He has now demystified the presidency. He has demonstrated that presidency is something that you serve your term. He served 15 years, if I'm not wrong, and gave our offer to Hifikepunye Pohamba and his successor will have a successor. So progressively now, you are beginning to build that institution. You have a very young private sector That young private sector is involved with a much bigger and a much stronger, a much more developed economy in South Africa. That umbilical cord must not be broken. But you must have a weaning period where certain industries are now weaned, but without breaking the linkage. And those in industries know better than us. In other words, you have a path which has worked, which you should now follow in terms of South Africa. You have a small market. You have 2 million people, and I think the purchasing market may not be more than 1/3. The real people who participate in the economy may not be more than 1/3 of the population. So you are the country, you with Lesotho and Swaziland, you should be shouting yourself hoarse about SADC. Because with SADC, you suddenly have a market of nearly 100 million. So that if you produce an item here, it could be sold in the SADC region. If you marshaled your resources in the Walvis Bay in terms of the fish and fish resources in the Atlantic Ocean and make people have appetite for fish, you ask the Danes what their fishing resources in Greenland and in the North Sea is doing to them. You have a beef industry here up in the north. You must persuade the Herero and other fellows that having cows roaming around is not very useful. Because otherwise, it's not useful. And a friend of mine, because what happens is that you leatherize the meat. So what you do, but you don't just tell them to stop that. Create systems. Tell them if water is your problem, within every mile we are going to have water plants. If fodder is your problem, we are going to ensure that we have fodder, so that you have these diva cows which are fed as they sit, and the quality of the beef is then improved in that way. In that way, you'll have improved your agriculture. In other words, if you go sector by sector, you will discover 100 years from today, when you are gone yourself, you're upstairs, things will be working very well. And that is how you must look at nations. The problem with many of our leaders is that we start things and we want to see the results in our lifetime. Instant coffee solutions for nations can never happen. Today, if you go to the United States of America, they are talking about the exploits of Abraham Lincoln. The man fought the Civil War. He walked on the gate of a donkey and an horse-drawn cart. But today we are in the jet age. But we know, but for Abraham Lincoln, we will not have jets. 100 years from today, Namibians will be saying there was a man called Hosea Kutako, who helped Sam Nujoma, who participated in the struggle. They'll be singing praises of Sam Nujoma and Handi Mbaham and Toivo ya Toivo. That is the way it is done. But it will not be easy. It has never been easy. You ask any country, read the history of any country, whether it's the United Kingdom, whether it's India, all of them, they have had these difficulties. So I have faith that institutions should be built. Gluttony. You know, the African leader is a species that deserves keen study by psychologists and psychiatrists at once. Because, and I say this very seriously, look at somebody like Mobutu Sese Seko, who went in the middle of his village, built something that is out of this world in Badolite. You know, it was destroyed when they threw him out of power. This fellow at one time had more money than the Central Bank of Zaire, as DRC Congo was then called. Then you ask yourself, when he or she sleeps, what are the dreams that visit him? Because leadership, even in the little things that we do, even in your own little company, what worries you is the quality of the human resource, because that is the greatest resource. Make your workers happy, and you're halfway through the job. Has Africa had good leaders? Does Africa have good leaders? Yes, it has. But they are few and far between. Let me start with the early ones. On his departure from office after 24 years, Zambia's Kenneth David Kaunda had only $8,000 in his account. The world could not believe it. They tried looking for accounts everywhere, they could find none. Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere, whom I had the privilege of working under in the 1990s, did not even have a decent house in his rural home. It is the army that built him one as a retirement package. One house in Dar es Salaam. And he said at one time that the State House is a holy place. You must make your wife know, you must make your brother know, you must make your friends know. Ian Kama is doing a good job here in Botswana. Just read about him, a little more about him. Paul Kagame in Rwanda, even in terms of opening business, is doing something good. John Pombe Magufuli is doing well. Have not heard anything untoward so far. I do not know, so I'll not comment. I want to be a good guest, so I'll not comment about Namibia. So my own view is, therefore, is that African leaders must, you said, is it a congenital problem? I don't think it is congenital. I think one of the problems in Africa is impunity. Many Africans have gotten scot-free with many of their criminal activities that they think nothing can happen to them. Today, here in Namibia, I'm sure you have something called civic education. They say you educate people, you bring people at a seminar and you tell them corruption is bad. They know. You tell them that this is bad, they know. But they don't care. But why don't they care? Because corruption pays and nothing happens to them. The day you jail one cabinet minister here, jail one, and beyond the jailing you take all his or her gotten wealth, that is enough civic education for 20 years. That is enough civic education. The very last thing is about the Kenyan. I was acting on behalf of the chairman of the Electoral Commission in that matter alongside my other colleagues. And one of the most amazing things, since that decision, many people, including media houses, have asked me to give my comments. I said, I'm very slow. Why? The court has said that it will deliver a judgment in 21 days. I do not know the reasons. The only people who gave the reasons are the two judges who dissented. As a teacher of law and as a lawyer, in the fullness of time, it will be found that the dissenting judgments were the jurisprudentially correct judgments. Why? This is the basis on which the elections were nullified. That the Kenyan election says the Kenyan electoral process is a manual process with technological intervention at two levels. Level number one, at the point of identification. When I'm being identified and on the date of identification or election, I was identified, my biometrics came forth and I was given 6 ballot papers and I cast all of them. The next level, even before that, in the event that I'm not identified, there is a default position where I can be identified manually. In some cases it happened. The next level of intervention is at the level of transmitting the results. The court has said that whenever a returning officer, and we had 40,883 polling stations, they announce the result there, and the result announced by the returning officer is final there. Then it is collated by the returning officer. The presiding officer announces, the returning officer then fills a form called 34A, and using technology transmits it to the chair, who is the returning officer for presidential elections. Transmits what is already final. You remember, it is already final where it is, but transmits it for tallying, so that he adds all the 40,833 and 291 constituencies and comes up with a total and announces who is the winner in accordance with the elections. That happened. All the forms were there. But the law also says that those very forms which were transmitted electronically must be physically be brought to Nairobi, and they were brought. And they were there. Now, the court says, because when they ordered that the servers be inspected within 1 day, while it had been submitted on behalf of the Electoral Commission that you needed at least 3 weeks, because our servers are in France by Safran, and there is a support system from ATT in the United States, because that was not achievable for reasons that they did not summarize, the elections are therefore nullified. That is the case. And that is the decision that we have got to live with. Why? Because we must respect institutions. You know, it used to be said by one teacher that everybody knows the law except the judges, because that is why you have appeal courts to correct the decision. The only problem is that in the Supreme Court there is no other court. But my own view is I want to hear the reasoning of the judges in 21 days, because this was a majority ruling of 4-2. One of the judges fell ill during the process, so we had a 4-2 decision. Had it been 3-3, the elections would have stayed. So that is the position. What amazes me, and this is what I find unfortunate in Africa, when I read these things in Twitter, WhatsApp, and all manner of things, the most ignorant in the world are the most opinionated. People commenting on things that they have no idea about. Part of the problem in Africa, and permit me to use your question to answer this, is that Europe and America has given us a good thing called Twitter. They gave us another one called Facebook. They gave us another one called WhatsApp. Many of us think they are toys, and we use them with the slightest of discretion. And unfortunately, we of the middle class who have gone to school are the victims. We are the ones who say things that we don't think about. We are the ones who say things that we have no knowledge about. So right now it is being said, nullification of the election of the president in Kenya. That is good. Now democracy is working in Africa. Now institutions are working in Africa. Those who are Aboriginal English know, one swallow does not make a summer. It is a decision which has been arrived at, and we want to see what it will be said about it. Was it good for Kenya? Perhaps. So that this time round, whoever wins is not subject to the kind of doubt that we see. But that is what I can say about it. But this is the first time I'm speaking about it because I think that I want to see the reasoning before I arrive at it. But very lastly, and I hope this is the last thing, African captains of industry must be engaged in philanthropy. One of the things when you begin to see people engaging in philanthropy, it is a statement that they are no longer greedy. It is a statement that they have liberated themselves from want. Look at organizations such as Ford Foundation, or this Rockefeller, or all these. They are giving to charity. And I believe that there are enough rich Africans, even if they are not rich, enough public-spirited, in fact I should say public-spirited individuals. That is the way you are going to kill civil society funding from Europe and America. When civil society in African countries are funded by Western organizations, I don't blame them. The saying is still true, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if you want us to undertake research which is African-oriented, rich Africans like Aliko Dangote must make money, must give money to young Africans. Tony Elumelu must give money to young Africans. Patrick Mosepe must do the same. I do not know the richest man or woman in Namibia. Tell him I said he must give money. He must take 10% of his profit and give money to young Africans. And I'm also included in that assembly of men and women. So, in my view, if we do that, then we liberate our Africans from this glutton. Don't be cheated. Africans are very good people. Negroids are very good people. But they have individuals who have been bitten by the bug of thievery and gluttony. But it's our duty to liberate them, and we will.
Thank you, Prof.
Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, members of Parliament, His Excellency Isaac Younger, Kenyan High Commissioner, captains of industry, members of the media, distinguished invited guests, gentle ladies and women. Allow me to submit that Professor Lumumba, on behalf of the Board of New Era, has discharged his responsibility with distinction. And I would like to express our sincere appreciation and profound vote of thanks on behalf of the board, on behalf of management, on behalf of the entire staff of New Era, to Professor, who is the son of the African soil, whom I trust is your first visit here, Prof, to the land of the brave. And obviously this is not going to be your last. So between, and this is now off the record, that we will see how we can make your access through Hosia Patako much easier. Whether it is through a visa, whether it is through what, as you have said, that Africans should just feel free to move wherever they want to go on the soil. So thank you for that. The fact that you are a change agent and that you want to decolonize the African minds through this very provocative and thought leadership process. Thank you very much for that. I also want to recognize the presence of everybody, those who have really made this session your first activity of your first program for the 6th of September, that you took it upon yourself to come here, whether you were invited or whether you paid to be here, that you saw the importance that you came. Thank you very much for that commitment. I would like to also thank, in particular, our Deputy Speaker. I think we just had a chat and she said Parliament resumed next week, and we have been missing each other, all the MPs, so that we can start thinking about legislation and just to make the life of our African nationals who are staying in the country, and those Chinese who have been born in Namibia who became African also is. So thank you very much. I also like to recognize the presence of our members of Parliament as well as His Excellency and all of you who came. Thank you very much for that commitment. This is a session that has been put together by New Era in partnership with the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. And I would like to thank Dr. Odren as well as NBC's Director General Stanley Benjamin Similo for this great partnership and sharing of public resources, really to create platforms of this nature that we can share and tap into the knowledge and wisdom of great African leaders who wants to help us decolonizing our minds. We trust that this event is not going to be the last. It's going to be an annual event as announced by the Chief Executive Officer, and we hope to see you more tonight and next year, and we'll probably have to hire a much bigger event for the next event. I am glad that Prof flew in from South Africa with Air Namibia, and we'd like to thank Air Namibia as well for that sponsorship and the relationship that we have with them. There's also another sponsor, TELUS Namibia Consulting Engineering, for the generosity that they have invested in making this event possible. But I want to pause a little bit and talk about Air Namibia. We have so many airlines in the country operating on our soil: TAC, Qatar, Lufthansa, British Airways, and South African Airways. And many of you sitting here, with all due respect, probably have also decided in your mind that I don't fly Air Namibia. And that, I think, is also fits perfectly well in the topic of today, that you ought to fly Air Namibia. It is ours. A lot of money is flown. A lot of money is flown out of the country because we are working with Qatar, we are flying British Airways, Lufthansa, South Africa. It's the same. If our flights are delayed by Air Namibia, they do it because there's a technical error of the aircraft. They are concerned about our safety, and that's why the flights are delayed. It's not because of incompetence. So see it in a positive light and take it that they want to protect our lives and fly in Namibia, whatever comes. So don't come up with unnecessary excuses. I am late for a meeting. That meeting can be rescheduled. Your life is more important for Air Namibia. That's why the flights are delayed. So please fly Air Namibia. I think I'm not here to make a speech where I had a son of the soil to do that in the name of Professor. I was just here and invited you to say thank you to all. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to the event organizer. Thank you to our host, Gateway, and thank you all. We'll all see you this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we've come to the end of the morning session, but please continue to advertise in the New Era, continue to advertise in the NBC, and we'll host these lovely events for you. Thank you very much.